Is there anything wrong with wanting to legally reduce your tax bill? It's just been suggested that if you're complaining about this, then you are a hypocrite, because most pension funds in this country, your pension, is probably invested in this way. So if you're complaining and moaning about it, you are a hypocrite. Let's talk to social commentator Mal Fletcher. Morning to you, Mal.
Morning, Mike.
Do you think there's anything wrong with trying to legally reduce your tax bill?
Well, look, with respect to your previous guest, who is an expert in these things, I'm not. I think there is a difference for most people between investing purely discretionary income in the way that some of the individuals in these stories have been doing, and investing in a pension, because a pension is seen as a necessity, given the government's inability to completely underwrite pensions. So pensions are maintaining a reasonable standard of living when I'm no longer earning. That's not seen to be the case in many of these instances. But let me say that I think there are two other issues here that aren't being talked about a lot, and one is the ethics of it. Not everything that's ethically questionable is illegal. Many of these investments were apparently made within the letter of the law. But in some cases, I think they don't clearly fit within the spirit of the law, at least as most of us would define that. And prominent people, whether they're government leaders, business leaders, pop artists, I think they have a duty to promote the common good, to model what we might call responsible citizenship, not just to the level of the lowest common denominator, but to a higher than average level. I think that's an important factor here.
So you wouldn't try and do the same thing, Mel?
If I had the money, that's another question. It's a hypothetical question, and it's not hypocritical to say I don't know what I would do in that situation. It depends a lot on the advice I'm given, and I think some of the ethical questions here ought to be asked of the managers of the money, perhaps even more so than some of the individuals that are being, for want of a better word, accused. And I also think there's the trust element, Mike, because, you know, we have, in the words of one international communications group, a historically low level of trust in public institutions. This particular group, the Edelman Group, studied 33,000 people this year in 28 nations and found that on average something like 53% of people trusted the institution of government, and in most countries business didn't fare much better. And that's appalling when you consider that without trust the system doesn't work, it falls apart. You know, high trust equals capacity to act. So those who've been entrusted with much, whether it's government leaders or business leaders or, you know, even popular artists, are expected, rightly or wrongly, to show a high level of trustworthiness. I don't think that's an unhealthy thing, and I don't think it's hypocritical to expect that.
Isn't this really the politics of envy to a certain extent?
Yeah, well, there's certainly going to be some of that, and it is understandable that wealthy people will want to protect their wealth to a degree, but it's not acceptable if they do so in ways that reflect a disregard for the greater good.
But these people on the front pages of the papers this morning, Mel, you know, we're treating them as though they were doing something wrong, and they're not. And it's sullying their reputation.
Well, yes, and we have to be very careful how we discuss it. And certainly the press and media have to be careful that they don't follow the lead of social media and just trial without trial. But I think that what we're looking at here, too, is the difference, as I said, between what is illegal and what might be considered unethical. And I think in this case, what we're talking about more is an ethical question than a purely moral one. It may not be wrong or against the letter of the law for these people to invest in certain ways, but it is clearly, for most of us, against the spirit of the law to hide away large sections of one's wealth from the taxman purely in order for the end result of hiding away wealth or keeping wealth. I think that there's a responsibility for us to share wealth. That's what the purpose of taxation is, after all. So that's really the issue here. Not so much just legality, but perception and ethics are important too.
All right, Mal. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Mal Fletcher, who is a social commentator.